You will not hear war tonight. You will not see gold or gods or kings. Tonight you sit beside a boy who holds a reed pen for the first time, a pen he does not yet control, a hand that trembles, a lamp burning low, and a cat watching with bored, judgmental eyes. His name is not written in history, but he represents thousands, apprentices of scribes in Kemet, ancient Egypt, the land where writing itself learned to breathe. He sits cross-legged on the floor of a tiled room, around 1300 BCE, though exact dates hardly matter. The river Nile will flood and recede no differently with or without his existence. That is the beauty of history's quiet people. They lived without expecting to be remembered. The boy dips a cut reed into a palette of soot-black ink mixed with water and gum. It is thick, too thick. The cat sneezes, and so begins a career that will take years, not months, of repetition. Draw a line. Hold the reed steady. Breathe slowly. Write again. Not to create poetry. Not yet religious hymns. Tonight, just practice. Just symbols. Just patience. The room of nothing extraordinary. Imagine the scribe school, the papyrus, the house of life, not grand like temples, not shining like palaces. Its walls smell of chalk, reed, and sweat. Ink stains everything, tables, fingers, even the cat's tail. A single dim oil lamp flickers, fed with castor oil, thick and slow-burning. Enough to write by, not enough to see clearly. Shadows blur hieroglyphs into shapes like birds half asleep. You sit there, watching the boy practice simple repetitions of the reed leaf sign, row after row after row, until his wrist aches. Everything here is deliberately slow. Each stroke is a lifetime of repetition. Each line is a step toward literacy. In a world where only one in perhaps 100 Egyptians could read, he stops, shakes his hand, dips the reed again. The cat blinks, unimpressed. A scribe was made of boredom, not genius. No one becomes a scribe through brilliance, only endurance. Day 1. Learn to cut reed pens. Day 2. Grind soot into ink. Month 3. Copy lists. Words like cattle, bread, taxes, barley. The most powerful empire on the Nile survives because someone wrote down how many baskets of wheat were collected. Not a king, a boy with ink-stained fingers. He practices the sign for water ripple until the symbol tilts like a crooked river. His teacher does not scold. He simply says, again. And so the boy writes it again, and again, and again. This is history built not by battle, but by boredom, though boredom with purpose. Outside, the Nile breathes like an old animal while he writes. The city sleeps. The river sighs against its banks. Palm leaves rustle in warm wind. Somewhere beyond, fishermen mend nets in darkness. Another kind of repetition, equally forgotten by time. Cats wander freely in Egypt, valued for hunting mice that threaten grain stores and papyrus. One such cat, slender, striped, indifferent, curls beside the boy's leg. It purrs softly but occasionally bats at his pen as if to say, do not take this too seriously. Egypt did not rush. Not its farmers, not its scribes, not even its cats. The world that built pyramids also built quiet, line by line, tools more important than King's A reed pen, sharpened with flint, a wooden palette holding 2 cakes of ink, black for writing, red for headings and divine names, scrap, astraca, broken pieces of pottery, used for practice before wasting precious papyrus. The boy learns to hold the reed at an angle, so the stroke widens like a leaf. He practices bird hieroglyphs: owl, quail, chick, vulture. None of these mean wisdom tonight, they only mean practice. Writing is not art yet. It is muscle memory. The lamp sputters as oil cools. He shifts closer. You can hear his breath, slow, controlled, as he tries to perfect the curve of the mouth sign for the sound R. His teacher nods once. Approval is rare, and therefore heavy. The cat remains unimpressed. The body learns. Before the mind understands, he will not write sacred texts for years. First, he must learn to copy, not to think. The teacher places before him a model text, a simple list of offerings. Bread, 100 loaves; beer, 20 jars; oil, 5 measures; onions, 40 bundles; fowl, 12 birds. Numbers matter more than gods. A wrong symbol means a farmer owes more than he has, or less than is fair. A scribe controlled lives with ink, less dramatically than a pharaoh, but far more precisely. The boy copies, slowly, painstakingly. The candle flickers. Ink pools where it shouldn't. The cat yawns. Civilization advances one clumsy stroke at a time. Why cats stay in the story? You might wonder why the cat is still here. Because in Egypt, cats were not decoration. They were guardians of writing itself. Papyrus attracted rodents. Ink cakes smelled faintly of fish glue. A scribe without a cat was a scroll keeper without protection. The cat stretches, settles atop unused sheets. The boy does not move it. No one moves a cat in Egypt unless they want to bleed. History rarely acknowledges the animal that kept paperwork safe, but tonight, you will. Silent work builds loud civilizations. Empires need soldiers to defend borders. They need farmers to feed millions, but they need scribes to remember anything at all. That is why the boy practices in darkness, why his fingers wrinkle from ink, why his reed pen blunts, is cut blunts again. Writing is slow. Learning is slower. The house of life is quiet. Temple scribes train at dawn before the city stirs. Ink dries while birds rehearse the day. You listen to nothing happen, and yet history is being shaped, quietly, decisively, by someone who will never be known. The magic lies not in what he writes, but that he writes at all. Section 1 nears its end. Slowly watch him now. He completes one tablet. He begins another. He whispers syllables to himself. H-A-N again. The teacher replaces the ink pot. The cat finally sleeps. You feel centuries press like warm sand beneath your thoughts. No drama, no battle, only repetition, ink, patience. The boy will grow into a scribe. His handwriting will one day record the tax of an entire village. He may copy hymns praising Ra or Osiris. He may die young or old or forgotten. But tonight he simply practices. And so you wonder, how many great civilizations depended not on generals or gods, but on children learning to draw the same line 1,000 times under dim yellow light, while a cat guarded the scrolls. You return to the room of ink and quiet persistence, but time has moved forward subtly, like the Nile rising grain by grain. The boy is older now, his wrists steadier, his reed pens sharper, his ink diluted just right. He no longer trembles when writing the reed leaf sign. He now writes it almost without thought. The hand obeys, long before the mind needs to command. Still, the room remains the same. The lamp burns with the same faint circle of gold. The chalky scent of papyrus lingers like ancient dust, and a cat, perhaps the same one, perhaps its kin, curls lazily in the doorway, claiming the entire house of life with indifference. The boy is no longer new, yet still not trusted with anything important. He copies older texts, recites lessons, sharpens reeds daily. If the first year of training was about imitation, the second is about obedience to precision. For writing wrong is worse than not writing at all. The first mistake that mattered one afternoon, or perhaps early morning. For time in Egypt is marked more by sun than hours. The boy copies a list of grain allocations for the temple granary. He writes 10 measures of wheat, but his line tilts slightly. The number could be misread. The supervisor, an older scribe, with wrinkles like folded papyrus, notices. He does not shout, he does not strike. He simply takes the sheet in silence, sits beside the boy, and says, "Ink is heavier than bread." He means a slip of ink could starve a household. A careless symbol could deny a family's harvest for the year. It is boring, yes, desperately unpoetic. But this is the burden of scribes. Their work matters most when it appears simplest. A soldier might be heroic once. A scribe must be accurate every day inside the archive. Where lives become numbers, the boy earns enough trust to enter a new room, the archive. It is not grand like a library you might picture. No towering shelves, no polished floors. Only clay jars filled with rolled scrolls, labeled in red ink for easy sorting. Grain quotas. List of cattle owned by families across the region. No myths, no poetry, no triumph, just lives reduced to symbols and counts. You might think this dull, but to Egypt, this was survival. The Nile gave abundance, but also demanded record-keeping. A village might receive 40 sacks of barley one year, only 18 the next. Without scribes, storage would falter. Famine would bloom silently. Someone must write who owns how much. Someone must copy, tally, verify. Tonight, it is the boy. The rhythm of repetition, he copies scroll after scroll. His reed pen scratches softly, a sound like a beetle walking over stone. For 1, for 2, 4, 5. Small strokes, tiny marks, almost insignificant. Yet from these Egypt built tax systems, granary schedules, temple offerings, outside the Nile continues its eternal breath, swelling with silt that smells faintly of life beginning. Farmers chant songs older than memory as they guide oxen. Women grind grain in slow circles. Children chase frogs in reeds taller than themselves. None of them think about scribes. They only assume grain will be counted fairly. The boy feels ink dry on his knuckles like small black scars. The cat watches from a high shelf, tail flicking like a metronome to time his writing. The first time the boy writes in red ink is not for beginners. It is reserved for God's names, royal decrees, headings, warnings. It stands like a flame in the monotony of black. To write in red is not merely to copy, but to declare significance. One evening, after weeks of copying inventories, the boy is handed a new task, a temple ledger requiring headings. He opens the small cake of red ochre ink. It smells metallic, earthy, like baked sand. His pulse slows. He writes the sign for Ra, the sun god. The red symbol glows softly in lamplight, like sunrise caught in a scroll. No one applauds. No one kneels. But something changes. He has stepped from mere copying into meaning, life. Outside the script room, not all hours belong to ink. The boy walks home through narrow streets, where mud brick houses lean like old men. The smell of baked bread lingers in air thick with dust. He passes market stalls selling onions, garlic, dried fish. Cats weave through legs, never hurried, always certain of place. In his own small courtyard, he helps his mother grind barley into flour. The stone is heavy. His shoulders ache in a different way, a mundane, human ache, untouched by scholarship. No one here cares that he writes with red ink now. To them, scribing is simply a path to stable food and clothes, a practical trade, respectable, but not sacred. His father repairs fishing nets, never having learned to read. He watches the boy's ink-stained hands with something like pride, though he never says it. Egypt held greatness through such simple days. The cat follows him, now the same tabby, perhaps claiming him the way cats claim anything, begins walking beside him to the house of life each morning. He carries ink. She carries silence. He writes. She sleeps on unread documents. It is comical, almost absurd. How much history owes to a creature that cared for none of it, and yet, without the cat, rats would feast on scrolls. Without the scrolls, kingdoms forget themselves. Sometimes the smallest life protects the largest memory. The reborn miracle of administration, one season. When the Nile floods higher than expected, the archive becomes busier. Grain must be redistributed. Scribes must check and recheck records. Mistakes could mean starvation. The boy now writes full documents, not merely copies. Supervisors correct him, but less often. He is trusted with names of farmers, quantities of wheat, dates of collection. Nothing poetic, just survival. This is how civilizations truly endure, not in battles, but in ledgers. It is boring work, repetitive, uncelebrated, but essential. A scroll with his handwriting travels to a village far south, where a man counts barley based on symbols he will never know the author of. The boy will never meet the people who live because his numbers were correct. He does not need to. History moves quietly through anonymous hands. He learns what ink really means late one night. He works alone, save for the cat, who curls across his lap like a warm question. He copies a legal contract for land inheritance. One line states, 2 measures of field pass to the eldest son. He pauses. One stroke could change 2 to 4. One careless mark could shift wealth, alter generations. Ink is thin like water, yet heavy like stone. He dips the reed carefully. The cat purrs, a small reminder of presence in stillness. He writes the symbol for 2 with precision. Sharp as conscience, a tiny mark, invisible to glory, visible to survival. At the edge of section 2, he sleeps that night with stiff fingers, but a calm heart. For the first time, he knows he is not merely learning, he is serving time itself. Each word preserves, each number stabilizes, each mark protects someone's future. And so you wonder, how many of history's greatest triumphs were never shouted, never carved in stone, only copied in dim light by tired hands. while a cat shifted sleepily and the world remained unaware. We move now toward the final part of this story, where the boy becomes the scribe he was meant to be, and we watch how a quiet profession shapes empires through nothing louder than ink drying in silence. The boy is no longer a boy. You see it not in his height or the set of his shoulders, but in the confidence with which he sharpens his reed pen. Years of repetition have transformed clumsy fingers into instruments of exactness. He no longer asks how to hold the reed. His hand simply knows. His wrist moves with a calm steadiness that can only come from long practice under dim lamps and patient teachers. The house of life has become familiar to him. The smell of soot ink, the scratch of reeds on papyrus, the faint heat. Even the walls seem unchanged, the same beige plaster bearing the same faint cracks. But the boy, now a young man, has crossed an invisible threshold. He no longer copies the world. He records it. Around him, Egypt continues its ancient rhythms. The Nile rises and falls. Farmers harvest barley in slow arcs of bronze sickles. Priests chant hymns into cavernous temples. Markets swell with onions, fish, and baskets woven by hands as anonymous as his once was. The world does not notice a scribe's arrival into adulthood, but the future will depend on him all the same. The first official document, the day arrives quietly. He is handed a scroll of fresh papyrus light, crisp, smelling faintly of river reeds. The senior scribe says only, "This one goes to the governor." It is a census record, a list of families, their fields, and their obligations. There is nothing dramatic in it, no royal decree, no sacred ritual, just numbers, names, and lines that must not be mistaken. A town's yearly planning depends on it. He sits at a low wooden desk, feet tucked under him. He breathes slowly. The cat, yes, the same faithful creature, circles twice before settling on a warm stack of blank papyrus sheets. Her tail flicks over his arm as if to test his focus. He writes, "Household of Tenu, 3 persons field, 1/4 arura, 6 sacks of wheat due slow, careful, precise." Ink flows in the exact width of a barley grain, the standard of a trained scribe. When the document is finished, he lifts the papyrus and feels its slight weight, a weight disproportionate to the power it carries. The supervisor examines it with the practiced eye of a man who has lived half a life in ink. He nods. Approval is not spoken. It simply is. And with that nod, the young man's work enters the machinery of government, the vast, quiet system that keeps Egypt functioning year after year. The room where the dead speak now, he is allowed into another chamber of the house of life, one older, cooler, and more sacred. Shelves hold medical texts, ritual instructions, hymns, and fragments of stories that rarely reach common ears. These scrolls are the nearest Egypt has to memory. He runs his fingers gently along a sealed papyrus containing the instructions of Tehotep, a text written centuries before his birth. Hieroglyphs drawn by someone long gone sit preserved in perfect black lines. It humbles him. The scribe who wrote those lines might have died before he was born. Yet here is that man's hand perfect, unshaken, still speaking. Do not be proud of your knowledge. Seek counsel from the ignorant as well as the wise. He feels the weight of the task before him, not a burden, but a continuation. Ink outlives bone. papyrus outlives breath. Every stroke he writes now joins an unbroken chain of craftsmen stretching through centuries. The cat sneezes, a reminder. Even sacred rooms gather dust. A day of letters, not decrees. He writes every day now. Some days the work is dull beyond measure. Daily temple offerings, grain tallies, lists of workers repairing canals, inventories of linen garments, records of oil issued for lamps. The most boring tasks are often the most critical. Without lists of linen, priests cannot clothe statues of the gods. Without records of canal repairs, the flood might destroy fields. One afternoon, he spends hours copying a shipment of fish, 42 baskets, mullet catch, from the western marsh, delivered by boatman Mena. It is so simple, so ordinary. Yet, if the count is wrong, someone will go unpaid. Civilizations depend on thousands of such moments. No one sees them. Everyone relies on them. A lesson in danger without drama toward the end of flood season. A dispute arises in the town. Two farmers claim the same strip of field. Both insist the land belongs to their family. Voices rise. Tempers flare. Threats simmer. But it is the young scribe's work, his precise copying of an older record, that settles the argument. Years ago, he copied an inventory from a fading original. It mentioned the disputed field, clearly naming the rightful owner. He didn't think much of it then. It was just another assignment among hundreds. But today, the scroll prevents violence. Not a soldier. Not a judge. A scribe. He realizes something curious. Scribes keep peace not with swords, but with accuracy. The cat and the candle at night, when others rest. He often returns to the archive room to double-check his copies. He lights a single candle made from animal fat, thicker and softer than temple oil lamps. Its flame wavers like a nervous heart. The cat follows him, as always, settling beside his leg. She blinks slowly, content in the warmth. Sometimes she rests her paw on a rolled scroll, as though to claim authorship by proximity. He laughs softly. A scribe's life is lonely, but never without companionship. And in Egypt, a cat is better than most companions. He whispers to himself as he works, reciting lines to stay awake. Steady hand, steady ink. Write what is true, erase what is wrong. His teacher once said, "A scribe's enemy is haste," and so he never rushes. The candle burns lower, the night deepens, the slow labor of handwriting continues. The first time he teaches years pass quietly. The young man becomes trusted enough to instruct new apprentices. Children holding reed pens with the same trembling awkwardness he once had. He tells them, "Cut your reed at an angle. Hold it lightly. Let the ink breathe on the papyrus." They nod, pretending understanding. Though everyone learns only by doing. He watches one boy struggle with the owl hieroglyph, the same one he once feared. He guides the child's hand gently. There is a strange satisfaction in this, not pride, but the sense of becoming part of something longer than a single lifetime. The cat, as if sensing a new generation of inspects the children with regal judgment. They adore her. She tolerates them. Thus, knowledge continues, one hesitant stroke at a time. Ink that outlasts its maker one morning. A messenger arrives from a distant gnome. He carries a scroll written in the scribe's own hand, an old report he barely remembers drafting. It traveled downriver, across towns, through hands unknown. Now it returns with new notes in red, added by officials. A strange feeling rises in him. His ink has moved farther than he has. He realizes that a scribe's words travel places his feet never will. He may live his entire life in this same town, but his writing can govern distant fields, settle border disputes, update temple records miles away. He is not immortal, but his handwriting might be. A life measured in quiet. He will not write decrees of pharaohs. He will not inscribe tomb walls. He will not craft hymns recited by priests, but he will document births, fields, crops, debts, distributions, the true machinery of civilization. He will live quietly, work steadily, fade into anonymity. That is the fate of most scribes. And yet, without them, Egypt collapses into forgetfulness. The young man looks around the house of life, students murmuring, elders scratching symbols older than memory. The cat weaves between legs, tail upright like a small royal banner. He feels something like peace. Near the end of section 3 one night, after finishing a shipment log of papyrus bundles, he rolls his tools carefully, reed pen, palette, ink, worn cloth, a smooth piece of wood used for straight lines. He blows out the candle. Smoke curls like a departing ghost. The cat lingers at the doorway, waiting for him. They step into the cool night together. Above them, stars glitter over Egypt, the same stars under which scribes have worked for generations, and the same stars that will shine long after their names are forgotten. He does not seek glory. He seeks precision. He does not chase fame. He carries ink. He understands at last to write what endures is its own quiet immortality. And in that thought, you find the ending of this story, soft, patient, steady, like ink drying on a fresh scroll. So now you must wonder, how many lives were shaped by hands we will never know? By ink that survived its writer, by documents that allowed a kingdom to remember itself long after the scribe was gone.